All right. Hi, YouTube. It's taken a minute, but I'm here to do start watching the Nick Fuentes Tucker Carlson interview again, and I want to. Um, Probably I was a little gun shy on some topics from the first one a little bit, um, so I want to probably clarify some things. I have listened to Nick Fuentes or heard his thoughts for several years now. I do not ascribe to his version of pretty much anything. That being said, so let's break down what Israel is real quick before we get into all the other Nick Fuentes stuff. And before I continue this interview he had with Tucker Carlson. Um, Israel is a theocratic state. Its official religion is Judaism. Um, it was established and settled by mostly Eastern European Jews. It was established by the United Nations. Um, it is a country that has a very, very religious conservative ruling party in the Likud party. That being said, um, when someone is, I do not subscribe to the belief that if someone is anti-Israel, that they are de facto anti-Semitic. I do not ascribe to that. Israel is a country. You can disagree with a country's aims and goals and their actions and not necessarily be against the ethnicity that is the majority of that country. Um, I'm opposed to theocracies in general. I do not believe that in them. The founding fathers didn't believe in them. Uh, Europe was racked by wars because of this. It don't understand what I'm talking about. Just look at the 1600s and just get an idea of what kind of hell there is when there's uh, wars between organized religions. Um, there was even a concept back at the time, curious regio et religio. I believe I'm saying that right. Um, Probably not, but essentially it meant that your religion was whatever the ruler of your territory's religion was. So if he was Catholic, you were Catholic. If he was Protestant, and whatever flavor of Protestantism he was, or and it was a he at that time, you didn't have that. You would be as well. So it was very normal for common people to not believe strongly in anything because it could change at the drop of a hat and you could be persecuted for believing too strongly in the wrong thing. So that's where that comes from. That's what the founding fathers were trying to get away from, was religious persecution. The idea that that this new world could be embroiled in the same type of religious faction conflicts that the old world was. But I, having heard his comments or seen his comments for a very long time, I know what Nick Fuentes' beliefs are. What his beliefs are. He's not just against Israel as the country. You know, he's not. So that being said, let's continue on, and I'll start the interview here.
That same night? This was, I think, a couple weeks later. Happened a little bit further down the line. And so...
Were you surprised that he knew you were?
Yeah, I was. I was surprised at why he cared.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, how does he even know who I am or what I'm about? And it turned out that Cassie Dillon, she had texted him earlier and she wanted him to take me under his wing. She texted him after that debate and said, you really like this guy. He's amazing. He did this great debate. She goes, but he's a little too pro-Trump. He's a little too Trumpy. And he goes, I'll take a look. And so I guess the two of them were kind of like grooming me in a sense. They wanted me to go maybe and be a Daily Wire, or maybe looking me as a potential conservative activist or influencer. And so they started paying attention to me. And the more critical of Israel I was, I started to get this really intense pushback from the both of them and from a lot of the people at Daily Wire.
Why do you think, so you're an 18-year-old college freshman, you're clearly talented and you're engaged, you're really interested, and you ask not crazy questions like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And rather than explain it, they just call you a racist, call you an anti-Semite. Like, that's the first response. That seems like the least effective. Well, it turned out to be not very effective in your case, but that seems like the least effective thing you could do. Why do you think they did that?
Well, I think that you have to look at it not in retrospect, because hindsight is 20/20. And so looking back, you could say they made a terrible mistake because look at sort of what they provoked or what they catalyzed. But at that time, you got to consider, I'm 18 with no following, with no network. I'm coming from the suburbs of Chicago. My parents didn't go to college. I have no connections. And so for them, it was very easy that if they detected that a promising young guy was going to become anti-Israel in the conservative movement, they could crush that person easily and grind them under the heel. So they sort of were alerted, oh, there's a precocious young guy that isn't on board with Israel. We'll keep an eye on him. And if he gets too vocal or popular, we'll cut him down. We'll crush him. Because at this time, as you know, in 2017, it's a very different time. 2016, 17, any criticism or dissent on the subject was a death sentence. You became radioactive, unhireable, blacklisted. And that's exactly what happened. And basically from then on, it was just this escalating series of blacklisting, censorship, hit pieces, rumors to try to ostracize me from the movement. And
while you're a college student?
Yes. As a freshman, yeah.
Most coffee cups.
Okay. I really have no strong opinions on what he said there. I think that's been kind of established U.S. foreign policy for quite a while, is unconditional support of Israel. That's been the case for 50 plus years, perhaps. Certainly since Eisenhower, the Yom Kippur, is it the Yom Kippur War? Yeah, the Yom Kippur War. I think it was only until Saudi Arabia and the U.S. became strong allies that some of that sentiment kind of softened a little bit, or we got more involved. But clearly our primary involvement, and frankly, most of why the Middle East dislikes us, is our support of Israel as a nation. That's just evident. I mean, I don't even know if there's an argument against it, against that fact at this point. But the idea that someone, I mean, maybe if Ben Shapiro had that much control over, quote, the conservative movement, I certainly don't recall that at the time, and that certainly wasn't the case in the 2000s, and definitely not in the 1990s. For sure not the 1990s. So if what Nick Fuentes is saying is accurate, that people who did not have 100% support of Israel, or did not support Israel 100%, were blacklisted and ground under the heel of in the conservative movement, that would be a very recent development.
Part of your political evolution.
Yes.
You went from a fan / acolyte to an opponent, and then just pivoted against everything.
Yeah.
That he believes.
Yeah. It was because it was this new dialectic that Trump forced.
Yeah.
Trump planted the seed.
And the seed was America first.
Yes.
So once you accept that, a lot of the way we're doing things becomes impossible to support or justify.
Right. The contradiction becomes apparent. It gets moved to the center, and it becomes unignorable if you're consistent.
So what kind of efforts did they make to make you go away?
So this is a couple of months down the line. You know, first they would try to dissuade me from asking questions, because I was friends with a lot of the Daily Wire writers, not just Cassie Dillon, but many of them were Jewish. And I would ask them point blank. I would say, so why do we give Israel all this money? $3.8 billion per year? What is that for? And they would say, well, there's a really good answer for that, but you're asking it in the wrong way. You're asking it in an anti-Semitic way. I'd say, I'm asking for the proof. What's the argument there? And so first it was the sort of, hey man, could you kind of tone it down? Maybe just don't bring that up so much. But I was persistent because at this time I was genuinely inquisitive. I wanted to know, is there an actual reason? And I was actually expecting that there was a really good reason for all of it. And the more that I read, the more that I dug into the subject, the more I found out there's a lot of these neocon Jewish types behind the Iraq war. There's the foreign aid complex, which is really unique. There's AIPAC, which is this intense foreign lobby where it's bipartisan. It seems to be the only thing that the parties can agree on. And so it just made me burn more with curiosity. So I just kept asking them. And eventually they said, you know what? We're not going to talk to you anymore. And these are my friends. I met them, went to Christmas parties with them. And all of them one day said, you're done. We're blocking you. We're never going to speak to you again. We're never going to have you on our show. And I said, wow, like this seems like inhuman. I'm struck by how impersonal this is. Like here, I thought we're friends. We're all conservatives. Maybe we disagree on one issue. Now I'm being canceled by the right. So I was shocked by this.
When was this?
This was February or March 2017.
So you're still a freshman in college?
Yes.
Are you even paying attention to college at this point?
No, not at all. And my grades started to suffer because I was just really focused on this.
So that's pretty young to get canceled and pretty young to have friendships destroyed over politics. Like that's usually, like decades down the line.
Right.
What did you do?
Well, I just became more emboldened. And so I took this story on my show. At this time, I was on RSBN and I had this show, which I named after the inaugural. It's called America First. And I would kind of subtly bring up the Israel topic and say, this is something you're not allowed to talk about. This seems like an apparent contradiction. It's a big problem. And they escalated their attacks. Cassie Dillon would call my boss, who she was friends with, at RSBN every day for weeks, saying, you'll never believe what Nick said on his show tonight. It's so racist. It's so bad. You got to take him off the air. It's going to make you look bad. And I would then get word from my boss, Joe Seals. He was the founder at Right Side. And he would call me up and say, I don't know what has gotten into Cassie. I thought you guys were friends, but she is calling me every day hysterically, demanding that I fire you. And I was like, wow. So it just keeps getting worse. It starts with this, they're very weird about the subject. Then they don't want to talk to me. Then they're trying to get me fired. And I'm thinking, okay, so clearly what I'm asking about, there's some truth there that they don't want.
I should have asked you this earlier. Did anyone during the course of, pre-cancelization say to you, here are the reasons? You're not asking the question correctly, but there are reasons that our foreign aid to Israel is so high. And here's what they are.
They did, but in a very general and vague way. As you know, it's never specific. They would say things like, well, they're our partner in the Middle East. They're a democracy in the Middle East. Just as very vague. It's rhetorical. And I read the Israel.
Okay. So between Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying stuff like this, and Nick Fuentes doing this kind of very, so far, I would say tame, almost, kind of interview with Tucker Carlson, I think it is important to note that Nick Fuentes is a white nationalist. Okay, he is a spouse, he doesn't think the Nazis were that bad. He's calling for the repeal of the civil rights movement, that women should not own property and should be subordinate to men. He's believes in all of that. So far, and I will freely admit this, taken just on the face of it, just this interview right here, what he says is fairly tame. it sounds fairly reasonable, frankly. I too don't believe Israel as a country should be getting aid. They're a very wealthy nation. I too believe that it's not necessarily in U.S. national interests to prop up Israel amongst a bunch of neighbors that are hostile to it when, frankly, a lot of their actions are hostile to their neighbors. Um, you know, if you are not the biggest military on the block, maybe not piss off your neighbors so much. Just a thought. And I don't believe that the U.S. should just blank check provide military support to Israel. I actually grew up in a time period where it was Gulf War One, and I still remember the CNN videos of the Scud attacks to Tel Aviv and how we defended Israel from all those attacks. And frankly, that's pretty much the only place the attacks went to. And my memory is a little dim at this time, but I still do remember that I believe at least one Scud got through and hit a U.S. military base. Maybe the shrapnel did. But that being said, Israel and Israeli intelligence has been central to a lot of our involvement in Middle East entanglements. At least several actions have been taken against the United States due to our unfettered support of Israel. Do I believe we should support democracies? Yes. That being said, it has seemed at times like we back Israel's play no matter what. We don't lean on them to act in reasonable fashion without them knowing that we will back them no matter what. So just take it on the face of it. So far, this interview is rather tame and germane. So I feel it is important to note that Nick Fuentes is an espoused white nationalist, believes in, he is a white supremacist. There's no bones about it.
And Stephen Walt, and they break it down very succinctly that there's no real strategic benefit. Actually, there's strategic liability. Eastern Mediterranean is not a strategically important region. The intelligence that Israel provides is not useful. Actually, it's detrimental because they frequently lie. The technology we give them, they pass along to the Chinese, which was a big scandal. So I would give them all this and say, yeah, that's not adding up. And they would say, yeah, well, you really just can't talk about that.
Your friend said that to you?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so what happened to your job? The Right Side Broadcasting gig?
Eventually I got fired. I got kicked out.
Why?
Because one of these clips that Cassie Dillon had a problem with, she ran it up the flagpole. She took it to Media Matters, actually, which is a left-wing outfit. They're like a cancel mill. And
wait, the Daily Wire person took it to Media Matters?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I'm 99% sure.
Huh. What was the clip?
It was a clip, ironically, where I was talking about the travel ban, the so-called Muslim ban, and I was defending it. And I said that the First Amendment does not protect foreign nationals. It doesn't protect Salafists, Wahhabis.
Right.
He's like, I said, they're saying that there's a constitutional right for radical Muslims to come here. And I said that, how are they protected by the First Amendment? They're foreign nationals. And the authorial intent of the First Amendment was actually not even to protect that to begin with. It's kind of anti-Christendom radical ideology. So it's something, ironically, that probably Shapiro and Cassie would agree with, but they recognize the currency that a clip like that would have with the left.
Okay, hold on a sec. The First Amendment absolutely applies to that. The First Amendment doesn't just apply to American citizens. It applies to anyone within the purview of the laws of the United States of America. So if you're here, then the First Amendment applies to you. It's not something that it picks and chooses. And I think he's being ridiculously disingenuous on that. yes, freedom of religion is enshrined in our Constitution. You can believe whatever you want or not, as you choose to. Um, this is not like there is no establishment of an official religion, and the First Amendment says you can say whatever you want. Um, and that applies everywhere in the jurisdiction of the United States of America. And I would think for someone that's America first and pro Constitution, they would know that. So if he does know that and he's saying publicly something different, then you got to wonder the underlying motive.
Because the left could say, you're Islamophobic, you're racist.
So she brought that to the left, saying, look at this guy. It's not that he's anti-Israel, but he's anti-Muslim.
Yes.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yes.
And so that clip appears on Media Matters, which at the time, I was the subject of a lot of attacks from them at the time. And people kind of listened to them.
Yeah.
Including on the right, they listened to them.
Yes.
So what happened?
So I had to write an apology. My boss called me up and said, you need to apologize for what you said.
For being anti-Muslim.
Yes. And so I didn't write, I'm sorry, but I had to write something like, well, I should have chosen my words more carefully and this, that, and the other. And ultimately that.
Okay. All right. I mean, I used to spend days driving, listening to Rush Limbaugh, Mike Gallagher, and everything else. I call bullshit on that one. Just flat out bullshit. I don't see any right-wing media outlet letting someone go for anti-Muslim statements. That just smacks of complete and total bullshit to me, particularly like post 9/11 type. I mean, I don't believe it. I don't believe that's why he was fired from Right Side Broadcasting Network. I don't. I would need to see the receipts on that, and I mean emails and everything else to even begin to believe that. A right-wing media outlet firing someone for being anti-Muslim? Give me a break.
And they fired me
anyway.
A couple weeks later, yeah.
What was the pretext for that?
Well, they wanted to get in the White House press office. They wanted a press pass. And they said, the stuff you're saying on the show isn't like a good look for Right Side. They're not going to let us into the White House if you're with us. But the pressure in this scenario came exclusively from the Daily Wire. Yes. Yes, because, and here's how I know why. My show got maybe 100 live viewers every night.
Not a powerhouse show.
No. So the Media Matters was not onto me. They were put onto me by people in the right that wanted me canceled.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So then what do? You're failing in school. Your show just got canceled. What's your plan now?
So I dropped out.
College.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I hated college, and it was very expensive. Even I had a substantial scholarship, but it was still expensive, and I didn't like it. So my plan was that I was going to go to a different college. I might work for a year, make some money. And eventually I got the show back about a month later. They came back, and by popular demand from my 100 viewers who were very dedicated, Right Side offered.
Not for nothing, but the manufacturing jobs that he wants to bring back. I put myself through college working on a factory line. Just a thought. He absolutely could have done that.
Me the show back. And so I took the show again over the summer. And then I applied for a job at the Leadership Institute. That was kind of the next big saga.
But you didn't get that job.
No, I did not get the job.
Why?
Well, I was told, because I knew people that worked there, that were field representatives there. It was a field representative job. And so I went out for a job training at the end of July 2017. So after that second semester, and I applied for this field rep job. It was this 2-week training. And I go there, and on the first day of the whole thing, They go around the room of all the prospective applicants. It's like a big tryout, basically, for 2 weeks. And they wanted to get everybody to break the ice and know each other. So we did introductions. They said, say your name, how old you are, and why you're a conservative. And at this time, people are not where, let's say, we are right now. They're not America First. They're not anything like, they're not talking about great replacement. That's not on the radar for them. So you go around the room and you hear stuff about small government, free markets, personal responsibility, that sort of thing. And they get to me and I said, well, I'm a conservative because we're losing our civilization because of mass immigration. America doesn't resemble America anymore. France is no longer France. I said, and if we don't conserve the demographics, forget about the rest. That's what we need to conserve. And I said that. And I was told later on that at that moment, I was immediately disqualified by the people that were running the job training.
On what grounds?
I said
that. Where to even begin? Great replacement theory. Let's start there. I don't think many people, or I should say many people seem to have a very weak grasp on history in this day and age. And let's just say this idea of great replacement has been used so many times in the past. It seriously is a tired old trope. It's not anything new. He's not being innovative. He's not coming up with anything like, ooh, you're such a visionary, Nick Fuentes. No, I mean, this was used in the past. Just look at your history. That's all I'll say. Romans said it about the Spaniards. We're talking Roman Empire. It said it about the Spaniards. The Greeks said it about the Macedonians. Let's just in the United States during the Great Expansion, it was said about the Catholics. It was said about particularly about the Catholics, actually. Almost exactly the same type of thing, too. Great replacement. These Catholic Irish are having so many kids. Soon this country will no longer be part of its Protestant roots. We will. This is a bad idea that just gets recycled over and over and over again throughout history. It's almost laughable that, this is even a conversation now. And someone as intelligent as Tucker Carlson clearly is. He is a smart guy. You have to be smart not to basically pretend you know what the common man needs when you have never been part of the common man. The great replacement thing is just bullshit. It's the same thing, it's the same thing that was brought up against the Catholic Irish. Irish need not apply. Irish were drafted disproportionately to fight in the Civil War because they were just coming over here, and the Irish Catholics themselves were fleeing persecution in England because of the potato famine. So this is just a bad idea that keeps coming back.
that was too far right. That was too extreme.
Worrying about who lives in your country is far right?
Apparently.
When we started this show, we were looking for a very specific. Check out Meriwether.
So where does that leave you ideologically? Like, how are you changing at this point?
So at this point, I'm realizing that something is deeply wrong here in the conservative movement, because we were led to believe in those days of the campus culture wars and Gamergate and all that, is that we're the marketplace of ideas and we're about free speech and the rest of it. And here I am being nuked from orbit by Ben Shapiro as a kid, and for asking what I thought were reasonable questions, because I didn't come from some strange background. I come from a normal home. My parents are Catholic. They're married. We came from a relatively affluent suburb. I went to Lyons Township. That's like a very affluent high school.
That area of Chicago is actually very affluent and has been for a fairly long time. He does not come from. It is a affluent suburb of Chicago. It is not like South Side at all. I am going to end it here for now. And frankly, I actually think I'm just going to put this video out there unedited. Please hit like and subscribe. I hope to continue on with this further, because I perfectly honest, a lot of what Nick Fuentes is saying in this interview sounds very reasonable. If this were the only time I had ever heard him or seen his writings or anything else, I would probably be swayed. A lot of what he says makes a certain sense, and if you believe him on why he was fired from Right Side, what happened to him at the Daily Wire, then some of his beliefs do make sense. And right now, he's not said anything I personally vehemently disagree with. I just disagree with things that I know he has said, but not here. I do want to make that distinction. What he is saying in this interview sounds very reasonable. I too don't believe that Israel should be given a blank check. Israel is not a religion, it is a country. It happens to be a theocratic country, but it is a country nevertheless. Just because you disagree with a country does not mean that you are anti the ethnic group that is attached to it. One thing he did say in here, and maybe I kind of ended it, it kind of was at the tail end of the last video as well, is the idea that, if your major allegiance is to China, go to China. If your major allegiance is to Russia, go to Russia. I am an American patriot, a U.S. patriot. I do believe your allegiance should be to the United States of America. You cannot have divided loyalties. I do believe that. And, if you hold allegiance to China, then certainly you should not be a U.S. citizen. And yes, I know. I know there's dual citizenships, but I don't agree with that. I don't believe that it should be the policy of the United States government to allow people to have dual citizenships. I may be wrong. That's just a belief I have. All right. Thanks a lot. Night, YouTube.